Welcome, this is Alan Palange with ProScript Media, and thanks for joining me on this video. The topic of this video is closing techniques. So the question I get all the time is, the two primary questions I get is how many closes or how many deals can I do in the course of a day? And of course you can extrapolate that to what it will be for a week or for a month. And how many of those closes should happen on my first presentation? So we need to define, if you're doing a face-to-face presentation, you're already at a greater advantage than those folks that are on the telephone. Anytime I can get in front of a client, shake their hand, and keep in mind, 80% of all communication on a face-to-face is done through body language, and we can achieve a lot with body language. So the way I would maybe close somebody on a face-to-face would be slightly different, or I would alter that approach to if I was closing through one of our call centers. So let's take the call center for a moment, and then I'll segue into face-to-face. It's my feeling, based on the price and the flexibility of a payment plan that we would allow the client to have, and as an example, we have no problem if a client wants to pay half now and half in 7 days, and it makes the barrier to entry that much less. And we're not talking about an expensive sale, as all of you know, to begin with. And of course they can pay, whether that's on a PayPal, whether that's on a credit card, we can do an ACH check. We can pretty much take any form of payment they want. So of course if you're face-to-face, you have the option of taking a credit card or taking a check. If you're on the telephone, it's credit card, PayPal, which applies to both face-to-face and over the telephone, and we can do an ACH debit if you're processing over the phone. So it's my opinion that if I'm on the telephone, I am attempting to close each deal when I have a meaningful conversation. And a meaningful conversation, and let's define some terms. We start out with a prospect. A prospect turns into a lead. A lead turns into an opportunity, and then when you close the deal, it's a one, W-O-N, a one opportunity. So when we're in the prospect phase, this is of no consequence. It's a potential client, but that's all it is. The moment we have a meaningful conversation, and a meaningful conversation isn't 1 minute on the phone and they say, do me a favor, send me an email. And I'll tell all of you, whether you're in the field or you're on the phone, sending emails is not going to be your road to success. Now, I'm not saying and I'm not advocating that we would not ever send out an email. We do have 6 templated emails that are very well done, that are also video-centric, and I want to talk about not only emails, but the ability, once you're signed up and you're in the program, we're going to text you a number of text templates as well. So what this means is, in an instant, you can reach out to the client by sending them a text, whether you're right in front of them, but of course if you're right in front of them and you have a smartphone, which you have to have a smartphone, if you're doing a face-to-face and you're in the public, you have to have a smartphone. And we would encourage everybody to at least work towards getting a tablet. And at the time of this recording, tablets have come down so greatly in price that they've become very reasonable. They're no longer $400, $500, $600. So they've come down quite a bit. But at the end of the day, if you're in the call center, you have the ability to send a text to a client. And as an example, one of the links that you'll find in a templated text is our rating with the BBB. So you send that to a client, they click on the link, it brings up immediately in their smartphone the BBB listing and shows our A rating. Also shows our company name, of course, our location, our primary location, and some other statistical information. And then you have another text that you can send that will allow them to pull up a mobile website right on their smartphone. So you can utilize these tools, and I'm more of a fan, especially if you're in the call center environment. I'm more of a fan in instantly reaching out and sending somebody a text. Now, with that being said, let's go through some of the closing techniques, and let's go through how we begin to harvest what an objection is. At the end of the day, every objection that a client gives you an opportunity to resell the client. And you think of these objections as barriers to the close. It's not until you wipe the slate clean and you cover all of the objections before you'll ever be able to close a deal. So I tell salespeople, if you get no objections, you're not going to make a sale. It's that simple. It's very rare that you'll get what we call a laydown, where somebody says, Alan, say no more, sign me up. And I mean, maybe 1 out of 100, you'll be lucky and you'll actually get that kind of a transaction. But the objections are very important. And when I'm given an objection, the first thing I do is I redefine and I make sure I understand what the objection is. So somebody may give you an objection and they may say, listen, the website I have right now fits on a normal smartphone. I don't see, why I should buy a mobile website. Well, the first thing that tells me is I didn't make a connection during my presentation and state my case for what the problem is, what the solution is, what the benefit and the values are. But that being said, so I would say to the client, Joe, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. What you're telling me is that if I could show you why it's more important to have a mobile website as opposed to your website coming up on a mobile phone, that you would be interested in becoming a client. So what I've done, and anytime you ask a closing question, I would suggest that you do not speak when you're done with the closing question. We have a saying in sales, upon asking that closing question, whoever speaks first will lose, right? So we don't want to overtalk the sale, and we don't want to overtalk the close. So if I ask a closing question, I need to then be quiet and hear what the client is going to tell me. So by dealing with each individual objection, you need to think about it in the same light as peeling back one layer of the banana, one piece at a time. And every objection that you give me and every objection that I overcome gets me closer to a close. Now, at the end of the day, if the economics of this is really quite light, I mean, we're not going in for $1,000 sale or a $2,500 sale. We're bringing an enormous amount of value and benefit and really creating a good solution to what is a real problem. None of this is self-manifested. Once you do your presentation, and especially on a face-to-face, everybody should understand, and it should be well established, what the problem is and what the solution that we bring to the table and how that will rectify what the problem is. So in my mind, there are very few times that it would be acceptable to me on a level 1 sale selling mobile websites as to why I'm unable to close you on that first transaction or that first meeting. And I think all too many times, and I'll hear it here in the call center, somebody will say to a salesperson, well, send me an email. Well, okay, here would be my response to send me an email, because in my mind, if they're telling me send me an email, it tells me that A, they're either trying to get me off the phone and avoid the sale, or that I haven't addressed or answered all of their concerns or questions. So my first thing I would say when somebody says send me an email is I would say, listen, Joe, I'm delighted to send you an email, and I have plenty of them. I can send you plenty of information, no problem. What's your email address? And I take down the email address. And by doing this, I'm lowering my prospect's guard, because at this point, they think they may be successful in getting me off the phone. So I'll take the information, I'll confirm that I'll send an email, and I will send an email. But I'm then going to say, Joe, before I let you go and before I send the email, may I ask, what haven't I addressed, or what questions have I not answered that you still may have? It could be that the manner in which I've articulated and made my presentation, maybe I've missed something, maybe the client has misinterpreted something that I've said, and I won't know that unless I keep on digging and going for the close. So the point is, and we all know this, and I've said it before, is if you make 10 meaningful conversations or 10 meaningful presentations, we all know you're not going to close 10 deals for whatever the reason. But I come back to a very simple fact. If what we did was offered for free, probably 8 or 9 out of 10 would actually say, sure, go ahead and build me that mobile website. So it would seem to me that if the barrier to entry is so low, and it is with this particular level 1 product, mobile websites, that we need to establish, initially, as I mentioned, one of the elements in a prior video, we need to establish trust. We need to establish what the problem is and what the benefits and what the value is that we bring to the table. So if we come to the determination that it's probably not money more times than not, it's either a lack of understanding of why it's important, a lack of understanding of exactly what we're going to do or the solution that we're providing, or what they really will get in the way of a benefit. If they see the value and they understand the benefit and that we're creating a solution to a problem, then you should have a sale. So all too many times, if we allow the client off the phone, or if you're on a face-to-face and we allow the client to push us away, you will not know what their true objections are until you go for the close over and over and over. And like I've mentioned, it's peeling back each piece, each layer of the banana. And honestly, if we know we're not going to close 10 out of 10, and we're not, even on meaningful conversations, my goal is to still close 2 or 3 out of those 10 meaningful conversations. So if I approach every sale with the assumption that I'm going to close this transaction, and if I don't close this transaction, I want to know why. What haven't I addressed? What issue have I left open on the table? Is it a trust issue? Is it a benefit issue? Does the client not even see the problem? But I'm only going to be able to harvest that information not by sending an email and not by calling back in 3 days. I'm only going to establish what their true objections and what their issues are by attempting to go for a close. Every time I go for a close, if I'm put off and I'm unable to get a commitment from the client, then I want to know, Joe, tell me, what haven't I addressed? What's holding you back from becoming a client? Do you not see the value? Do you not see the benefit? And I'm going to probe that client, because if I don't probe, I will not find out. And I want the objections, because I understand the more objections I get from the client, the more I have the ability at overcoming those objections. Now, all of you will receive a frequently asked questions as it pertains to mobile websites. And that goes a long way in answering a lot of the questions that a client may have. And hopefully, after you've gone through all of the videos and our training online, you feel well equipped to begin to overcome every potential objection that you may run into. Now, with that being said, you're also going to receive a pitch document, and on that pitch document are some isolated objections that you'll get and our response and rebuttals to overcoming those objections. It's not a question of whether or not you should push and continually attempt to do a close. It's a fundamental rule in sales that we're going to continue to go for the close until which time we're left either with the prospect of a sale or we're left just at a crossroad where the client says, listen, I'm not buying today. And if you allow a client, other than the few exceptions that I've maybe mentioned where you'll continue the call on the second visit, but certainly on the second visit, when you call that client back, if you're unable to close that deal on the second visit, I'll assure you, you'll probably never close it. So go out there, whether you're face-to-face or on the telephone, make an assumptive thought that you're definitely going to close every single transaction, or at the very least, attempt to close every transaction. If you attempt to close every transaction and you have a foundation for understanding how to overcome the objections that you're going to be faced with, I'll assure you, if you work our program, be it in the field or be it here in the phone room, that you will close ultimately 2 to 3 deals a day and make a very substantial income. I hope this video has been of use to you. It is important. We are salespeople, that we understand we're here ultimately not to make friends. We are here to close deals and earn income. And we're only going to do that when we constantly attempt to close the transaction. So go out there, close some deals, and I will see you on the other side. Again, it's Alan Palange with ProScript Media. Thank you very much for viewing this video.